Tired of shows that bark and scream at you? This is the show that speaks to you.
Here's the game plan.
It's the Big E Sports Extravaganza, where we go inside the issues, present a variety of topics, and feature some of the biggest sports guests on the planet. Now, here's the one and only, award-winning Elissa Walker Campbell.
Hey, Elissa Walker Campbell. Welcome back to the Big E Sports Show. And the WNBA is at a critical juncture. They have got record popularity, rising stars, and also a little bit of some internal friction. From players' criticism of leadership to questions about the league's direction, there is no shortage of storylines. And joining us now is longtime women's basketball journalist, editor, and author, and that is Howard Megdal, whose new book, Becoming Caitlin Clark, explores the trajectory of one of the game's most compelling figures. Howard, it is such a true pleasure to have you back on the program. How are you doing?
Hey, listen, I'm doing well. It's always great to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are looking forward to shining the spotlight on your new book, which of course is titled Becoming Caitlin Clark. And it is a lens into the evolution of women's basketball. It's not just a biography. So what were some of the immediate lessons about the sport's growth that jumped out during your research?
What is fascinating to me, and the reason why I thought it was so important to write this book, is that it is clearly traceable the ways in which both a number of factors over the last 5 years and, quite frankly, a number of factors over the last 100 years have directly contributed to Caitlin Clark's rise. And so, to me, there's been a lot of, let us say, heat over light in a lot of the conversation in and around Caitlin Clark about the idea that either Caitlin Clark is the Big Bang Theory of women's basketball and nothing existed before she got there, which is, of course, very silly and not true, or the idea that she is entirely incidental to a rise that was happening anyway. And that is very clearly not true by the ways in which she herself has managed to rise to the occasion and help to grow the game. And so I thought it was really important to unite these two strands in a way that people could understand why this has happened, how important it is that it's happened now, and what we can look for in the future because of it.
Yeah. You know, Howard, when we talk about media coverage before and during her college years, it certainly set the bar high and set the expectations high, both good and I guess that's bad. I mean, for how the league and fans would receive her.
I think it's ultimately good. What's really remarkable at every step in her story, and right clearly through the writing of this book, and unfortunately not including this year, is the serendipity of performance and good health and timing. So the fact that she was able to rise at a moment that ESPN began showing every single women's basketball tournament broadcast, something they didn't do until 2021. Yeah. The fact that she was on ABC because for the very first time, ESPN put an NCAA tournament game on network television. Seems obvious in retrospect, but at the time, it was a first-time move for them. So all these different ways in which she came of age at a moment the spotlight was brightest, but then the fact that she was not hurt, did not miss a game at Iowa in her entire college career, and saved her best performances for the biggest moments, whether it was the Elite Eight against Angel Reese in her senior year that helped bring them back to the Final Four, or that national semifinal game against South Carolina as a junior where she and Iowa managed to upset one of the best college teams I ever covered in Aaliyah Boston's senior season in South Carolina with Dawn Staley.
How do you think Caitlin has just navigated the continual pressure of just the media attention and as she continues to evolve and grow even as a player?
Well, there's two elements to it. One is for Caitlin herself. She has essentially always been a public figure. She was renowned as a middle school AAU player to the point that her first game as a freshman in high school was front page sports news at the Des Moines Register. And so she is, from an absurdly early age, been the center of attention and learned how to center herself and center her game in what it is that she was able to do. The other thing, and this is obviously significant, is that she is doing this in the state of Iowa. And in the state of Iowa, there is a legacy, a tradition, first of all, an unbroken tradition of women's basketball and girls basketball. It was not banned in Iowa the way it was banned in almost every other state in the union, where we had decades without varsity girls basketball at the high school level. And so you also had in Iowa generations of people who revered and elevated the female athletes. And so there is a legacy and an understanding of how that feels when it's being done at a national and, in fact, worldwide level that Caitlin was able to better handle than I would argue almost anyone else who could have. And don't take it from me. Take it from Vivian Stringer.
Oh, yes, Vivian.
Former head coach at Iowa.
Hey, we are going one-on-one with Howard Megdal, talking about his brand new book, Becoming Caitlin Clark. And I'll pull back the curtain and share a little bit about as far as who had the biggest influence on her game as she developed into one of the most dominant players in all-time women's basketball history.
I'm so glad you asked this, because the legacy is not only just the 6-on-6 Iowa girls and women's basketball history, which led directly to the type of game that she played, but the people who were doing it. So her coach for 4 years at University of Iowa, Elissa Walker, had created a system that was, number one, built around pinpoint passing, perimeter shooting, sharp cuts, offense first approach. And it was as if you were building a system that was perfect for a Caitlin Clark to come in and play. And then, of course, her associate head coach, who is now the head coach at Iowa since Lisa retired, is Jan Jensen. Well, both Jan and Lisa played 6-on-6. In Jan's case, Jan is the granddaughter of one of the first 6-on-6 stars of the 1920s, Dorcas Anderson. So there's this direct lineage to the way in which basketball was played in Iowa over the past 100 years. I know it's more of a collective answer than an individual answer, but it is impossible to separate the ways in which Caitlin wows people on the court with the way in which basketball strategically, stylistically developed in the state of Iowa.
Well, and just how instrumental were her parents guiding her journey from a young age to becoming a national star? And how did the family help set the tone with discipline in the home and just that competitive spirit?
It is. I mean, there's a family that understands how to do this properly. There's a family that has worked hard to essentially let her understand her competitive fire was a plus. It was not just something to be managed, but it was also something to be strengthened and emboldened. Again, there have been a lot of talented players, and you get to college and you don't have the proper guidance, and you don't have the proper coaching, you don't have the proper system. All these different ways in which you could put an artificial ceiling on the talent. And so, again, I give so much credit to Lisa, who, again, I'm delighted to say wrote the foreword for this book.
Yes, she did.
But that was a conscious choice by me because she was so instrumental in building Caitlin into the player and person she's become.
The title of the book is Becoming Caitlin Clark. Our very special guest, prolific women's basketball writer, Howard Megdal. And we're talking about Caitlin as certainly one of the most high-profile players in WNBA history. Kind of share a little bit with us as far as how she has been received by her teammates and players around the league.
It is, again, one of these things where we've seen a lot of heat over light, this idea that either people can be entirely delighted and grateful that she's in the league or despise her. And of course, neither of these things is accurate. What is actually happening is that players are very respectful of the way in which she plays the game, the level of play that she brings to it. They are simultaneously, in the way that any human being would be, very happy about the fact that an increased audience level led to a larger media rights deal, which is going to lead to more money in everybody's pockets. And at the same time, when people like me come to talk to them 10 minutes after a game where they had to go hard at Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever for 40 minutes, they're not in a position in that moment to talk excitedly about Caitlin Clark's effect on the league. Both of these things can be true, and I don't really understand why people are not giving WNBA players the grace to operate in such a way to have two disparate thoughts in their heads at the same time, but it is how human beings actually work.
Well, from a leadership standpoint, Caitlin, as she's, muscling through all of this and navigating this, as I said earlier, what can she do to continue to earn respect inside the locker room while balancing that, all eyes are on her, that external spotlight? I mean, she's fascinating to watch.
She is fascinating to watch, and I think she's just got to keep on doing what she's doing. You walk the walk, you put in the work, and no one ever questions that for a moment. You continue to play at an elite level. Every chance you get, you continue to show up for your teammates. If every eye is on you, again, the thing that I come back to is the eyes have been on her at a period of time where she was incredibly young. And she managed to avoid any sort of public break, any sort of scandal that would come along with it. She's done a really good job of navigating that well, her and the people around her as well. So I just think that will be something she'll get to do more and more as she progresses in the league.
I got to ask you this too, Howard, while you're on the program. I mean, do you think the league and the media have done enough to support her? Or does it sometimes make it harder on her as far as being, at the forefront of the league all the time?
We would need another hour at least to talk about the impact of the media, because the media, of course, is not a conglomerate, as we both know.
Yeah.
There are individual aspects of the media that are based around covering her well, and there are individual aspects based around the media that like to use her name for clickbait and headlines, and it's not one or the other. Here's what I know about the league. The league, which saw growth in the 4 years in terms of attendance, in terms of revenue, prior to her getting there, has supercharged it. Kathy Engelbert has put the league in a position to receive $250 million apiece from 3 expansion franchises from owners who weren't giving that money out of the goodness of their heart, but because they see the growth and direction of the league. The league, in terms of media rights, is going to make 8 to 9 times in this next round to what it was making in the period just prior to Caitlin getting here. So I hear that, the league needed to do more, and I think the league needs to do better on officiating, without question. But in total, when you look at what the league has done and the way in which it has maximized player experience in and around Caitlin's first 2 years in the league, I'm really hard-pressed to sit here and say, wow, there hasn't been a tremendous amount of progress about something that is bigger than anyone, the league included, could have imagined it would be.
What do you think about the officiating and just the physical play that someone like Caitlin Clark has had to face? I mean, is that all part of like welcome to the league moment, or is there something deeper going on?
It is. I see no evidence that Caitlin specifically is targeted. I do absolutely believe that the WNBA is a more physical league than the NBA. And so there's 2 parts to that. One is, do you want the WNBA to be that going forward? And it's interesting. For my column at the 9 Sports this week, I spoke to a lot of people around the league. There are people who very much like that the WNBA is a different product, a more physical league. I think people can and do differ on that question. Here's the thing. WNBA referees make about 20 to 25% of what NBA referees make on a per game basis. Annual basis, it's even wider because the NBA has 82 games and the WNBA only has 44 games. And I say all that to say, if you want the WNBA to be a more physical league, officiating is actually harder in the WNBA than the NBA, because you're calling more things, because you're going to have to navigate tempers within a game and within a quarter and even within a play-to-play basis. And so if the WNBA wants to continue on that track, which I think is very reasonable because more and more people are watching, it's obviously a product that's very compelling, there needs to be parity in officiating pay with the NBA. That is an absolute must when you think about it as an investment cost over time for the WNBA.
Good stuff. Longtime women's basketball journalist, editor, and author Howard Megdal is our very special guest. His latest release is titled Becoming Caitlin Clark. You can go anywhere online and get a copy of that. Howard, connect with our audience. Where can they find you online?
go to the Nine Sports, THEsports.com, and go ahead and check out what we are doing. We have a newsletter called The Nine Daily, which gives you 6 different women's sports every single week for $6 a month or $60 a year. The Nine Basketball, THEIX Basketball, is a women's basketball newsroom. We will have 4 different people at the WNBA finals covering this. We have beat reporters in every single market. It's $9 a month or $72 a year, all for us to do the work of providing you with light over heat so that you can know what's going on in the amazing world of women's sports and women's basketball specifically.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, Howard, we can't let you get away. You got to weigh in on Nafisa Collier's, just her comments, as I would say she blasted the commissioner of the WNBA. How did you interpret this?
I would refer you to what I said a couple of minutes ago, which is to say, I think that you have an active CBA negotiation. I think indisputably there's been growth for the league economically. And my gut feeling about this is that in CBA negotiations, you hear a lot of people go back and forth. And then ultimately when signatures are signed on a new CBA, things move forward from there. I think there's simply been too much economic progress, and therefore the pot is too big for these two sides not to figure out a way to work it out. But I guess the other thing I would say is that is in some way they are a victim of their own success, which is that CBA negotiations are as heated as they are now because the pot is significantly bigger than it's ever been. But that is to the league's credit, in my view.
Hey, good stuff. Always a true pleasure to have the opportunity to catch up. Thank you, Howard, for stopping by.